right. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Ariel Shelton, and I am really proud to be on today's phenomenal panel. This lineup of leaders are really paving the way in the midst of, as we all know, really tumultuous times, right? We've gone through so much in the past few years, and I'm just ecstatic to be involved in the conversation. Currently, I serve at CultureWorks Greater Philadelphia, where I'm the co-executive director. I also happen to be from here, Detroit, Michigan, where I studied, I studied the French horn with Damien Crutcher. Yeah. I give French horn vibes, right? I mean, you know. But anyways, yeah, I'm just really excited to be here, which is located on the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe, which includes the Three Fires Confederacy of Ojibwe, Ottawa, and Potawatomi peoples. So, yeah. Before we introduce ourselves, we definitely want to get to know you all, our audience, a bit more deeply. So please do us a favor and pick up your phones if you have them. We're just trying to get a little bit of demographic information. You know, everybody is welcome, of course, but if you can fill out this survey and let us know if you are 30 and under or over 30, that would be awesome, just so we get a sense of who we're here with. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and kick it off so our panelists can introduce themselves.
Yeah, hi, hola. My name is Carlos García León. If you can't do the trill of the R, Carlos is just fine. I use he, they pronouns. I am a queer, non-binary, Latina, Mexican statesman, currently the individual giving manager at Chicago Shakespeare Theater. And that's my brief little intro.
Hi everyone, my name is Jamie Sharp. I use she, they pronouns. As a visual descriptor, I'm a light-skinned black femme with braids, wearing a very bright fuchsia and red suit. You cannot see my red boots, unfortunately. I am queer. I am a classically trained vocalist. I'm an arts leader, really focused on challenging structural exclusion and disrupting the pipeline as means of reshaping executive leadership. I currently serve as the communications manager for Grantmakers in the Arts, which is the National Association of Arts and Cultures Funders, a bit of a mouthful. And I serve on a number of associate and young professionals boards in the Chicagoland area, including with the Chicago Philharmonic, Chicago Symphony, the Lyric Opera of Chicago, and the Nonprofit Professionals Network. And most importantly, I am a cat parent. So shout out to my beautiful girls who are holding it down at home.
We love the girls.
Awesome. Hi, everybody. My name is Paula Wilson. I use she, her pronouns. I am here as a arts administrator, flutist turned arts administrator. I serve as the member services and communications manager at Equity Arc, which is a national service organization dedicated to leveling the playing field in classical music. I'm really excited to be here today and to talk about how we are under 30 and asking questions.
Yes. Can we give this panel just another round of applause before we get started? I've been non-humbly sharing with people for like the past 6 months that I'm like the proud auntie moderating today's discussion. I just can't wait to just ask all the questions. So we're gonna actually go ahead and dig in, but before that, definitely wanna see the outcomes of the panel, or the survey. Let's see if they came up. Maybe not.
Oh, there it is.
It's loading.
Okay, it's
Loading.
loading.
There it is,
Yeah. There we go.
Well, welcome everyone.
Okay, yes.
Oh,
welcome.
nice.
This is good to
know. So we have 58% are 30 and under, and 37% are over 30. Wonderful. So, first question is going to go to Jamie. Jamie, how can young Black and brown arts administrators effectively assert their voices and assume leadership roles in a field traditionally dominated by older demographics?
Yeah, so I think probably the most important thing is to speak out when you are uncomfortable or you know that something is wrong. Be that to another colleague, to your supervisor. I was really resonating on something that someone said in the Black graduate pre-con yesterday about how when you speak out so much, it can feel really isolating, and sometimes you wonder if you're the one creating the problem that's not actually there. And that's why I think having a support system outside of your job is so crucial to keep you grounded and humbled in that regard. I think you'll notice I said I serve as in my role, right? I am not. I am Jamie. I'm not the role that I play with my employer and in my workplace. And so I lead with my humanity and my personal values. I think it's also important to note that you may be saying something that someone else thinks as well or feels or is experiencing that they don't feel as empowered to come forward. And then also that we don't always know what we don't know. So you could be shedding light on a situation or some information that someone wasn't privy to before, right? I think oftentimes our generation gets pegged as being like hypersensitive, and I want to shift that to be hyper aware, right? We're connected in a way that we have never been prior, and I go on TikTok all the time and learn something new like every day. And so I think with that, we can just try our best to continue to be open and learn and better ourselves as human beings first, that we then bring into the workplace with us.
Beautiful. Paul, I'm going to kick it off to you next. So what strategies can be employed to advocate for higher wages, yes, we should all get paid more, y'all, and healthier workplace cultures in the arts industry? And how can we make sure that the weight of that advocacy is not on the employee?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And I'm glad that you added that extra part to it, because that's a really important question to ask. You know, why is it up to the employee most times to advocate for themselves for more compensation? I'm really grateful to be at a place where that was not the case, where I was able to let my work speak for itself, the conversations and relationships I built with my supervisor, and they added it into the budget, a raise for me. And I think that more organizations should do that. Like, they should understand the impact that their employees and young talent are making, and know that if they don't make those investments, then they risk losing those employees. And so I think that's really important. But, you know, that's not always the case. So for organizations or employees that are at organizations where there is a case that has to be made, I encourage y'all to document, you know, what are you doing? What is the impact that you're having on the organization? And like I said, continue to build relationships, whether that's with your supervisor or another trusted employee that has the power, because power dynamics is something that's really important when we're talking about, you know, being a younger or maybe an entry-level employee. And so making sure you have those advocates that can speak on your behalf and vouch for you and for that additional support. And then on the other side of things, when we're talking about, you know, workplace culture, you know, coming from the orchestra world, I've been able to be privy to the union system, and it's been really interesting to benefit from that. Especially for me, it was from a health insurance standpoint. But it was also interesting to see, you know, like, for orchestras, right? Like, if they go a second over rehearsal, there's an extra amount of money that's got to be paid. Imagine if we did that for a gala. Like, if you had like 3 hours minimum or maximum, and then after that you got to pay all your fundraising employees more to do that. Just imagine. And so I'm just asking questions. You know, what if that was? What if something like that existed for arts administrators, where it's not up to the employee to continue to advocate for themselves, to set boundaries, to block off a lunch break on the calendar and make sure you take PTO, but these were things that were regulated in what we see with orchestra musicians in the theater world. What if that was the case for us?
Mm-hmm. Yes, love that. Carlos, we're going to go to you next.
Hi, I'm ready.
So in your view, how can philanthropy evolve to not just support the arts, but also work towards making itself obsolete by empowering self-sustaining arts communities?
Yes.
It's hard to, you know, work yourself out of a job, right? But I would say it's necessary. I'm curious about your thoughts.
Yeah, so I'll give context, because I guess I forgot to mention, and if you haven't read the bio, that's totally okay. I've been an arts fundraiser for about a little over 4 years now. I've been in the field for, I think, 5 or 6. I was a bassoon player, then worked for an opera company, and I worked for a Shakespeare theater company. Most of my fundraising experience at the beginning is really harmful for folks of color, for queer folks, for non-binary folks. So nowadays, I'm very much in this field trying to actively destroy it from the inside out, which is always a fun gamut. But my mentality in fundraising now is very rooted in anti-capitalist, community-centric, theoretical fundraising, and I say all of those things because I think there is a way to do fundraising, to be in the philanthropic world, and do healing work, and be good for folks who are not normally attached to philanthropy or who don't come from wealth or don't understand how to manage wealth. And so to answer a lot of that question really is, when Jamie mentioned this earlier when we were having dinner, just like I have an infamous quote that I believe I stole from like an actual leader, is that like when people ask like what's the dream role, what's the dream job, it's like I don't dream of laborer, but if I like if you do, like, props to you, mama, but like I don't envision a world where I work because I need to. I love my work and I love my colleagues, but I would like to do it just because it's fun and that because I want to bring people to the arts. And I think philanthropic has done such a disservice to the arts world because, the whole notion is that philanthropy is rooted in love for humanity, and it's never questioning whose humanity we're valuing. And it's also not doing the endeavor of like convincing folks that arts matter. Most of my job really is convincing rich people that arts continues to matter and that they should continue giving to us for the sake of our proprieties to continue doing the work that we do. And nowhere in my training as a fundraiser was there like, we should also talk to folks to convince folks that use their wealth to talk to their leaders, not only like in the government, but also to their network. And I want to have those conversations because I don't want to work as I don't want to convince folks that arts matter. I am tired of doing that work. Just come to me as a fundraiser, and I will treat you as a person, and I will welcome you to the theater, and I will make sure that you have a great time. But I don't want to convince you that the work that we're doing is important, and that's why I think I want it to be obsolete. And I think I answered that question, but
for sure.
that's where I come from, and that's why I believe. I think philanthropy, both like as a funder and as a fundraiser, but most for me primarily as a fundraiser, is that we have a lot of privilege in having these conversations with folks who have wealth, which means they have power, and I really value that, and I really understand their privilege coming from where I am. And I hope that eventually it's not just an individual endeavor for me and my company, but individuals, other fundraisers, and other funders who kind of have the same mentality into destroying philanthropy from the onset.
Love that. I'm curious with the audience, yes.
Thank you.
From the audience, if you've ever felt like you had to fight to share like the value of the arts, can you raise your hand if you've ever felt like you had to have that fight? Okay, keep your hand raised if you're tired of that fight. Okay. Yeah, I figured I was in shared company. Thank you so much, Carlos. All right, next up, Jamie, we're going to get back to you. What are some key professional development opportunities that young Black and Brown arts administrators should seek out to advance their careers?
Yeah, so I think we've been seeing a lot more fellowships come into play. I am alum of many. Carlos and I met through a fellowship, and now here we are 4 years later, which is incredible. But I think kind of aside from the more like formalized education, really your network, and specifically mentorship, I really credit with where I've been able to like go in my career to my mentors, some whom I talk to once or twice a year, and some I talk to weekly. Finding at least like one or two people who you can speak with candidly and openly about really anything, situations happening at work, in your life, what jobs you should apply for, preparing for things, is really just the most like priceless kind of item in my toolkit when I'm thinking about professional development.
Network is your net worth. All right.
I love that. Write it down,
true.
everyone.
It's real. I want to put that on a T-shirt and sell it. Paula, can you share some successful examples or strategies that have helped in creating a robust pipeline for young leadership in arts administration, recognizing that the fair majority of our audience is in that space where, going through the pipeline and continuing to grow? Yeah, I would love to hear your thoughts on what's been helpful for you in that journey.
Yeah, I would agree with Jamie about mentorship and networking, and I've also been a part of a lot of wonderful programs like that. And then I would also say for any of you who are involved in internship or fellowship programs, to make the most of it. And for employers who are offering those programs, I would also encourage you to do the same, to invest in your talent, not just, of course, pay your interns, but also make sure that you are seeing, okay, what are their goals for their career, even outside they leave that internship? You know, what do they need to be successful in investing in their growth and development? All the internship programs that I've done before and student employment experiences, I'm now working with them as colleagues, all of my supervisors. And that's been awesome, and they've been able to pour into me because I was able to do projects while I was in those internships that were not just like making copies or scheduling meetings. I was able to do something very substantial, and is what has allowed me to be where I am in my career now. And so I would just say make that investment early on, because you just never know where those employees are going to go. They might be your boss one day.
It's true. I've seen it. It happens. Carlos, you know, all of this ultimately is tied to our well-being, right? And as we know, our brain, body, spirit, they have to be at their healthiest points in order for us to have the healthiest workplaces possible and the healthiest outcomes for the field. Specifically when it comes to self-advocacy and mental health, I'd love to hear you share a little bit about how you see the importance of self-advocacy for young arts administrators, and what resources or strategies you'd recommend.
Yeah, as I'm thinking fully of the question, I want to give a what's the word I'm looking for? A trick of what I do to at least take care of myself is that I take naps in the office. Mm-hmm. I want you to also with that. I have an hour lunch break, not officially, like I'm not clocking in and out, but I take like a 30 to 40-minute lunch nap. I derive it from nap ministry. It's an act of resistance against capitalism, because again, I am an anti-capitalist at heart. But also the notion is that, you know, if we want our work to be excellent, if you, my employer, if you're watching, want my they already know, so it's not like it's a secret to them. But if you, my employer, or future employers, I will go if you give me more money. I ask money for a living, so it's like I have no shame about that. If you want my work to be excellent, I should be well rested. Mm-hmm. And I know that, at least in this society, we derive a lot on like continuing working. We take a lot of value in the work that we do, and sometimes folks, I think primarily folks of color, the global majority, feel like they're not worth unless they're continuously working. I come from an immigrant family, so I definitely derive the notions just like, oh, my family came to the States, and therefore like we should continue to be working to continue improving the lifestyle that we sacrificed a lot for. But nowadays, I'm just like, if you want my work to be excellent, I should be rested. And I don't get paid enough to drink coffee on a daily basis. Also, to at least continue this trend briefly, if you allow me, is that, you know, I think when I take a nap, I am living my ancestors' wildest dreams. Like, I don't think my ancestors who sacrificed themselves to come to the States, and even before that in Mexico, ever dreamed about taking a break, because they were too busy trying to just survive. So I feel like such an honor, such a privilege to be like, yeah, I can take a break, not just for me, but for like everyone who I stand on shoulders of. So that's that. I credit a lot to my therapist, who's also an anti-capitalist, so shout out to her. But in advocating for yourself as someone who has for a bit, it's like I've gathered support, as Jamie and Paula have said. It's not always my supervisor, but I know that colleagues in my organizations feel the same way sometimes about the way I feel, and it's just nice to know that someone in my organization is there behind me or will speak for me if they're in like the same leadership positions. I gather data because I am still a fundraiser. And I'm just like, hey, I've done really good work, actually. I've increased your annual fund and major donors. I've brought in lapsed folks that haven't come in like 5 years. That's all examples I can provide, and I know that to be true. And while I don't envision giving to be the trade-all of success for a fundraiser, because I think it's more about the people rather than the money, which is, I think, a wild take for fundraisers. But there is that. And I feel like I'm missing a component of your question. But to advocate for yourself, you have to understand, at least as a young person, is that you are valued because you are bringing experiences that someone may not have ever had. And because you are clashing, I don't want to say clashing, you are connecting with ideas that folks of other generations aren't. That is so valuable. And sometimes we put ourselves down because we're just like, oh, like this has already been thought, this has already been done, and it just wasn't successful. And I think about now, it's about like my interactions with you two, but also like Ariel, like I think the things that you two think about sometimes change the way I believe in things. And I don't think I could be saying here, speaking on things, if it wasn't for like, oh, that idea came with ideas that I've had from other people combined to make this really wonderful idea that it becomes more successful. And which is all to say, yeah, your ideas are valuable, and if you haven't told that to yourself, I hope you do.
Absolutely. And then this is going to be, an open question, but I'd love to start with Jamie and then open up. And it's around really what's at the center of today's conversation, which is, what questions should we be asking? How can we, continue to move the needle forward in order to do the important work of decolonizing the structures that we live in and work in these arts administrative spaces, right, and beyond. And so, Jamie, would love to hear from you. What steps can organizations take to decolonize their hiring and operational processes to be more inclusive and equitable? And I'm curious if you see technology playing a part in this. I mean, one thing I just want to build off of Carlos's statement on is, technology can, when used in its best ways, afford us the opportunity to carve out more time in our days to take a nap. And to do other things, that, move the needle forward pretty quickly. And so, yeah, I mean, just given you all's experience in the field under these conversations around decolonizing practices at the intersection of the advent of technology, how do you see, all of that playing a part for us to, move the needle forward?
Yeah, so starting with just the overall hiring process, taking one from Ariel, who is one of the co-founders of Arts Administrators of Color Network. They always say, yes, they always say, what is the salary? I cannot believe that I still see job postings without the salary.
Oh, and can I just say, we actually did put that on a t-shirt and sell it, just
so
to
you
be
can
clear.
buy it.
So.
Merch is available.
Asking someone for their time to apply for your job when they don't know how much where you're valuing them at is absolutely ridiculous.
Sticking on salary for a minute.
Yeah.
If you put a salary range, make it make sense. You can't be like 80,000 and $1 million.
Yes.
Like,
yes.
Yeah.
Also that.
Like you're doing the bill. Some states have made it a law, and I guess you're complying by the law, but like it's not helpful to anyone.
Yeah. Also things like making cover letters optional. I know that's a big practice at my employer. And we also, this is something I did not even know was a thing until Grantmakers in the Arts. I had my final interview and I was asked for a writing sample and they paid me for it. And I was like, this is wild. But it's really not, because I had to take time out of my day and my labor to research and put something together for them. And then they gave me money in return. And that was whether or not you got the job, right? That wasn't contingent upon me getting hired. So I think that's a really kind of great tool to have as well, and it's really not that much. As far as technology kind of coming into play, I think similar in the realm of cover letters, of writing samples, because I do a lot of writing for work. I use Grammarly, so if you're an employer and you're able to make a budget to use assistive technology to help your employees out, I know that's really helpful. That kind of also aligns with folks who may need accessible help for a variety of reasons, right? But also Grammarly is just really helpful. And ChatGPT, right? When we're rehashing the same things over and over and I have to write 5 million emails, it's just nice to have someone double check that for me, to Ariel's point, right? Then less time is spent on me sitting and trying to make sure I have all the punctuation correctly and I have more time to spend energy elsewhere.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Paula, what do you think about that?
Yeah, well, going to the decolonizing idea. I also think about having a more collaborative structure when it comes like going back to power dynamics within an organization. And similar to what Carlos was saying earlier, it's really important to know that even if you're at the quote unquote bottom of the totem pole, you still have ideas and perspectives to share. And so when organizations adopt a more collaborative model, then you're able to have those insights from everyone and perspectives, and it just really makes the product overall better because in theory the organization and the staff internally should be representing the folks that you're trying to serve. And so when I remember sitting in conversations at my former employer where you're in a room with like all different races, ages, everything really, and all these different backgrounds, and that just is really helpful when you're brainstorming and creating these ideas and products, because you have just so many more perspectives to pull from. And so I think that that's really important, and not just hearing and listening to other perspectives, but really involving folks in the decision-making process. And then when it comes to technology, I mean, I agree with all of those tools. They're very, very useful, but from an audience standpoint, we were having a conversation yesterday about like digital programs and QR codes and different things like that, and we even heard that in the last panel session talking about, making those transitions and how that might risk losing, other and older audiences. And that's something that, there's a balance that we have to find, especially as we, as younger folks, get more into these leadership positions. But at the end of the day, technology is a tool, and I was telling Ariel, I also think that decolonizing it's a mindset switch. And so I think that when there's just a level of education that needs to happen because when thinking about sustainability, do we really need to be printing like thousands, tens of thousands of programs when we're thinking about, environmental justice and things like that? And so I just think at the end of the day, we're all going to need to be evolving, and we all have things that we have to decolonize and rethink in order to just keep this world sustainable, and also our arts form as well.
Couldn't agree more.
I don't have very much to add. I think it's the only things I would say is, I've seen kind of an uptake on audio video recording for interviews or those kind of processes. I think it's really helpful if I think of like non-English native writers or speakers who may really benefit from being like an interview process, but in the first kind of round. The other thing that was coming to mind thinking of decolonizing was really being supportive of your sister organizations within the same city, or at least within the same kind of work that you do. I think I derive this from like fundraising and what like donor-centric fundraising really comes from like a nonprofit Hunger Games or the nonprofit industrial complex, where it's just like, oh, you are this organization and you must find your niche to find this audience, and then you must compete against everyone else to get that audience. And I have battled a lot that with like thinking of like polyamory and fundraising. So let me walk you into this because I see confused faces. So like this is I have an article about this, but you can find out more. But like I am a fundraiser who interacts with many donors, and I know those donors interact with many organizations. Therefore, it is wild to me that we have this mentality of fundraising as a monogamous structure where it's just like I am in one, as opposed to like knowing that you are a full person who loves other things. I love you from an institutional and as a person, and you can love other things, and I'm okay with that because you should care for other art forms. I work at CST. If you also like the Goodman Theater, awesome. They do great things. I am not competing with them. If you want to give them more money, sure, maybe you value them more, but then maybe someone else values us more, and I'm okay with that. I will ask you for more money, of course. That's just because I also don't want to get fired, but they haven't fired me yet. But like me as a person, I'm thinking like I should be supporting the other organizations because one, I've seen the organizations lose programming, lose staff, and it makes no sense to me that I'm competing with them because I'm in the same field, and we should be supporting one another. And that art that they create, whether it is another theater, or it's a different symphony, or it's a chamber group, or it's a ballet, is still valuable to not only like me as a person who enjoys that art forms, but as the city or the community we are part of. So thinking of decolonizing, at least for me, is just like I literally will call other development folks and just like, hey, like, we have this donor who I think there was one example when we did Romeo and Juliet. And orchestra folks know there's like two versions of Romeo and Juliet, the Stravinsky and the Tchaikovsky, which is my favorite. And I'm just like, hey, by the way, just to let you know, I know you love Romeo and Juliet, but like this organization is also Romeo and Juliet, but like the orchestral version, just wanted to let you know. And I then called that development team and just like, hey, I have this donor who might be interested or who might be joining you in case they aren't already. So it's kind of those situations that I really, really feel great. Yeah, and I think something about that feels really beautiful to me.
Yeah, and I'd just love to add, kind of going back to the application specifically for employers, like language is so important. Yes, you want to say we want X amount of experience, but also it's really about what people can do, because experience doesn't mean that you can necessarily do things, right? A degree in X, Y, and Z doesn't mean that you're actually good at what the job at hand is. And I've seen a lot of folks, and we've started to do the same, adopt just like a little statement at the end, really encouraging specifically like BIPOC folks, women, queer folks, disabled folks to apply for jobs. Because if it's one thing that white men are gonna do, it's apply for things that they're not qualified for. So we should also feel empowered to be able to do the same. On the other hand, if you read something and you're like, I don't qualify for this on paper, I didn't qualify for my job on paper, and here I am still, so please just put yourself out there as much as you possibly can.
Jamie's being a little humbled right now because Jamie has a promotion starting in March. Oh my God, I'm so sorry.
They ruined the
anyways,
surprise.
I ruined the surprise, but like, I think it's so important to be like, yeah, well, whether Jamie believes she wasn't qualified or not is not important because they are incredible at their job.
Yeah.
And they continue to learn.
I agree with that wholeheartedly. It just goes back to, I hope you're all feeling encouraged and just feeling that, you know, I just can't reiterate this enough. Like, you all have something that you bring to the table. It is of value, and it's something that organizations are looking for. Like, you are supposed to be where you are, and you need to get what you need to get out of your experience. I always say there's something you can learn one way or another. Whatever your current situation is, if it's positive, great, you're learning how to do it. If it's negative, you're learning what not to do. One way or another, you're supposed to be there, and just make sure that you know that and believe that and are around people that are continuing to build you up as well. Because I wholeheartedly agree. I mean, come on, Jamie. You're amazing. And so I'm not surprised at all that she got the job, but it's just important to be reminded about this over and over. Yeah.
I couldn't agree more. So I think it's time actually for us to segue into any audience questions you might have. Lovely Brianna is here to take any questions.
Put them in the chat.
If you can line up behind her, that would be awesome, just because we want to make sure that we have...
we want to get through as many as you give us.
Beautiful. And while we're lining up behind Brianna, I just want to mention, and we're going to get to this a little later, we have a QR code with amazing resources, but Brianna helped lead this awesome session yesterday morning. Shout out to Brianna, give her a quick clap. And there's like this spreadsheet that her and her colleagues developed with like a billion like amazing resources, basically, for folks that are, you know, working themselves through the pipeline. So I just wanted to make sure folks know about that. Please make sure you say hi to Brianna at some point. Okay, first question.
Hi, I'm Jenna. I'm coming from the Cincinnati Symphony and Individual Giving. I'm really curious more about the collaborative structure, because I don't feel like I have that in my department right now, but I feel like they might be open to it. So do you think that's something that needs to come from top down, or are there things that us as more entry-level employees can do to facilitate that? Just curious to hear more about that.
Yeah. Jamie, do you want to talk about how it works at Grantmakers a little?
Yeah, I mean, I think it has to come from both ends, right? So my CEO is as accessible to me as he is to the rest of the senior staff, but then also vice versa, right? I am sure that I am also accessible to folks that are not just in my immediate department, but across the organization at entry level, volunteers that we use for various events that we have. But I think it goes back into the most important part being just like ask, right? Like leaders need to ask for people's opinions. What do you think of this? Do you think this is working? Where can we change? Something I really love that we do for Grantmakers is reviews, quarterly reviews. I get reviewed, but I also review my supervisor. And so she takes that feedback and we have a conversation of what can she do for me as well as what can I do for her. So it's really like both ends, as opposed to, I think, other orgs that I've worked with, it's very much like, this is what I need to be doing better to assist like senior leadership, but what can senior leadership do better to assist me? Yeah, I hope that answered the call.
Sweet. I'll say that if we don't answer your question fully or it's not the answer you want, please feel free to like re-ask it, because I know throughout this conference and that sometimes I feel like the panelists are not really answering the question, which is no shade, it's just like, it just happens, so. Jamie did answer it, just like, it's no shade.
No, I know it wasn't about me.
I mean, it's like other panelists throughout the day.
No shade but shade. Go ahead. Next.
Hi, everybody. I'm the engagement liaison, and I will be reading questions from the online live chat put in by our live stream viewers. And for any introverts in the room, please feel welcome to put any questions through the live chat, and please use code 42N so I can see your questions. The anonymous asked, any tips for setting boundaries with your employer as a salaried employee?
Oh yeah.
Oh, yes.
So many.
Who wants to go first?
No notifications on your phone. This is a big one that comes up because I'm in a different time zone than my organization, so my working hours are different. I will not meet with you outside of my working hours. This is what's on my contract, so these are the times that I will meet with you. I also understand that I come from a privileged standpoint in that regard because I don't work for a performing organization where things can quite literally get set on fire in the evening and on the weekends. But again, I think that's a really important thing for folks who are in executive leadership here to practice that, because I started getting better at that when I saw my supervisor who would go on vacation and quite literally be unreachable for a week. And then I was like, oh, okay, so I need to do the same. I need to go on vacation and be unreachable for a week. And it's a slow process, and it's something that I really had to undo, and I think it's just so interesting the way that we see white supremacy characteristics like in
Urgency,
ourselves in those
perfectionism.
moments, right? And we really have to like work going back to like the whole decolonizing and dismantling like these systems and these ideals.
Something I'll add is that, as an also a salaried person, is I think sometimes as we enter the workplace, we're not entirely sure what our boundaries are. So I really do believe that sometimes it has to be a crossing of the boundary that we didn't know existed. And then once we acknowledge that, the first step is acknowledging that did hurt you and it would not continue making you a good employee or a good employer, to communicate that. Be like, here's a boundary I would like to establish, or if we can do something to not make sure that I'm no longer harmed by whatever action or event or time, that would be great.
Agree. Communication is definitely key. And I use Calendly to schedule meetings. And, you know, I recently took on a professor job, and so I had to update my Calendly because I need to get my head down and do some work. And I can't be meeting with everybody all the time on some of these days. And so that's a boundary that I had to set for myself. Also, when we have busy season, then that's when comp time is really important to be able to, you know, balance that out. Okay, yes, we might be working a little longer than normal. Okay, then balance that out. You know, Equity Arc does a great job of that, where when we have a conference, we take the week off after, which is nice. And so I just think this is, once again, it's something that has to be done with the employee and the employer. You have to have conversations and just make your boundaries clear. That calendar is a beautiful thing. Use it.
Couldn't agree more. And shout outs to Calendly. I'm not sure if everyone is aware, but it's one of the few tech platforms that is owned by, or founded, by someone from the global majority. So big, just kudos to Calendly. All right, next question.
Hi, my name is Chloe. I'm a composer at Boston Conservatory. I wanted to know, how do you stay encouraged and confident in the music industry, specifically in spaces where you're in like an academic or administrative area with like seniors as your colleagues? Because I know sometimes it's a little difficult to be able to be confident about bringing up your ideas and stuff. So like, what are some ways that you all try to keep your voice in the room?
Great question.
Like someone mentioned, you have something important to say. They have to learn from you too. And sometimes I think we forget just like, yeah, you are learning from the older generations or from people who are more experienced, but experience does not equate wisdom. You know? Like, your experiences also are important. Time does not, I think when we think of it just like, oh, we've been in the field for like 30 plus ages or whatever, they're just like, I mean, so I've seen it all. You've seen a lot, sure, but there's still things you haven't learned, and maybe you have. And I said with that confidence, just like, my experiences are valuable, and maybe I will learn from something, but then they also have something to learn from me.
And I also go back to what I said earlier about having like a good support system outside of the workplace, because when I talk to folks who are not in arts and culture, they're like, what are you doing? And then I'm like, oh yeah, none of this matters, right? Like, it does, but you know, like it seemed like you're like brought back down to earth and you're like, oh, this is so small, like not in like a like pessimistic way, but like life is too short to like sit around and then be like, should I do this? Just like, I'm a very impulsive person and sometimes I get in trouble for that, but you know what I mean? You get in trouble and then you keep on moving, and I'm very much like, ask for forgiveness. Yeah, ask for forgiveness like, after the fact, because we need to just like keep pushing forward. But really having people that have like that unbiased like outside perspective has helped me realize, okay, like it's not as scary as it feels in the moment, especially in school, in conservatory, like you can feel so small, and I've been there. But having people, outside of that to remind me that like, no, I'm good at what I do, and to Carlos's point, right, like I have something to add.
The last thing I just would say is I'm big on building consensus internally, so if there's something that I'm wanting to socialize, if I want to do it, have like the executive director of an organization do something, especially when I was at the orchestra, I would find other people that wanted the same things, and we would get on our Zoom together and figure out, okay, how are we going to, push this forward to our executive director. And so that's exactly what we did, especially when it came to diversity, equity, and inclusion. And we set a meeting with the whole senior leadership team, and it was really nice to be able to be around my colleagues who, were also Black and brown, and we were all in this together. It was much more powerful that way as well, and much more effective, and they ended up deciding to invest, in diversity, equity, and inclusion, and in that work. And so I would just say, find your allies in this space and get with them and work together to figure out whatever you want to do.
Hi, Kanisha Kellum, musical theater vocal ped from Boston Conservatory. Woo. In regards to, like, personally, I'm always, like, the only POC in a dominant cast workplace. How would you give tips, or what would you say would help to communicate DEI concerns to management and fear of, like, retaliation, of being called hard to work with, aggressive, things like that?
And by the way, panelists, just so y'all know, we have like 10 minutes for questions, so be luxurious in your answer. That's an important
okay.
That's good. I was trying to speak
Let me get comfortable.
This is probably not the answer that you're looking for, but I want to be like transparent and direct in that there is no way to avoid getting that you're hard to work with, especially like if you're a Black femme in the space. I think you just have to, similar to what Paula was saying, like set that consensus for yourself of how you're going to deal with whatever comes at you, and to how much that you're willing to give up. Because I know I'm very much at the point where if it needs to be said, it's going to be said, and if that person has a problem with it, then I will walk, because it's not something that I want to be a part of. I think that goes back into like the whole humanity aspect of it. I don't want to be miserable and wake up one day and be like 50 and be like, I poured everything into my career and I don't value like the life that I have. That's just not worth it to me anymore. I think I really try to pull like data and a lot of logistical information when I'm trying to make arguments, especially regarding race and ethnicity, gender, what have you, because people like facts, and that tends to be helpful. I also try to come at it from an angle of, I see what you're saying, right? I understand what you're saying. I need you to do the same with me, and we need to have this conversation where it's a back and forth dialogue, so it doesn't feel like you're speaking at someone or you're trying to tell them that they're wrong, but rather why, they should be open to your view of thinking.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and their response is all you need to know about what you need to do next, honestly. because you'll know whether it's a safe space. Because yeah, you can be in predominantly white spaces, and they can still be receptive and want to make changes and be want to do better. But if you're not getting that reaction, you need to go on like artsedmond.jobs.com and all these other things and figure it out. You need to be in a place that is safe.
The only thing I'll add is that, I do love speaking out, and I do love asking for forgiveness, but ultimately I don't get paid to do DNI stuff. No. Mm-hmm. Like, I will support it, of course, and I will advocate for it, but if I'm getting extreme pushback, okay, like, if you want to not have black and brown people in your audiences, this is your fault. I said what I said, and I'm not getting paid for it. I'll set an example. Like, I remember telling folks about salary ranges when I first started I'll say them because like they already know this, at Cincinnati Opera. And then months later, like maybe a year later, like, hey, Carlos, we hired a consultant that said that we should put salary ranges on job applications. I'm just like, cool. Okay, so you'll pay someone to tell you the things I've been telling you from the get-go. Love that.
Right. And they didn't pay you for that.
And they're not paying me for that.
For that idea.
Yeah, pick your battles.
Hey, Trey.
Hey, y'all.
Hi, Trey.
Hey, Trey.
Oh, I'm Trey. From DC. Hey, everybody else. So my question is about intercultural challenges. So without white people. So I had an experience recently. I feel like it's Ask Wendy. I had an experience recently at my job where I had an issue, and there was a big conflict. It's between me and a program that we did that centered blackness, and the issue arose with one of my colleagues who is Latina and another one who is an Asian man, and we were duking it out. And
can I briefly interrupt? Is this basically an example of like non-black people being anti-black?
Yes.
That's what I was about to.
And so I was trying to figure out, but the tea is that they went and reported this incident to a white colleague who
not the mixed company.
Baby,
who then
here's your
I
answer.
who I, on my little work iPhone that I turn off at 5 o'clock, had to send my long email and explain what happened because I had felt very disregarded by the situation, and that there was a whole lack of context that then I felt like disregarded me and the black folks who I was bringing into the space. And in a majority white organization, I know that this Latina woman and that this Asian man also probably have very similar experiences to me, but also don't have similar experiences to me as a queer black man. And so how would you navigate that sort of challenge? Thank you.
The first thing I'll say is, like, you non-black people who are anti-black, we cannot survive in this world and battle racism if we're not supporting black liberation. Like, what? Thank you. I appreciate the applause, but it shouldn't be applauded. It's just like, you should all know that like we cannot survive in this world if we continue getting proximity to whiteness. That is still in essence white supremacy. So if you're not supporting your black colleagues in their endeavors, particularly to bringing more black folks into the audience, what are you doing? Do not engage. Please leave. That's all I'll say.
Yeah, and this doesn't necessarily answer the question, but I think that's a really prime example of the way that white supremacy characteristics exist in people that are not necessarily white, right, and may have had those same experiences. I always think about the thing with like, because I love Rihanna, but she's a billionaire and there's no way to ethically be a billionaire. So I don't want to think about all the things that she did to get to that point, right? Like there's a lot of times that people have to conform, and you start conforming to the point where you don't even realize it because you just start behaving that way. And sometimes you have to be called in rather than called out, called in, right, to that. And I mean, my advice would be just to like have a candid conversation with them, make it very clear like why you're advocating for what you are, even though it sounds like you already did. But even just the steps that they took, why that you feel it's harmful to everyone as a collective, right? Like what they did to me at least sounds like that's hurting everyone at the end of the day, right? We're all here, we're all working towards the same goal. Let's brainstorm on how to work towards the same goal rather than trying to like pin against one another. And that's why tokenism is so tricky, right? You end up in these spaces and you think that, and we see this a lot with Black folks too, because we're not a monolith, and not everyone feels the same way. And it's like really tricky when you're like, but you feel this way and this is hurting everyone, and I'm trying to show you how it's hurting everyone. But there's a lot of times where we have to just find compromise in that for like the greater good of said project or artist or whatever moving forward. But yeah, I know that doesn't really directly answer it, but that comes up for me a lot as well, and it's something I struggle with.
Thank you.
I would just add on and say, if there are other colleagues that are Black and understand what you're advocating towards, loop them on in, like come through with, the folks that you need to in order to make things happen. I used to work at the Kennedy Center, so I know. Anyways, next.
Hi, Chris.
I already know the kind of
I kind of want to hear that.
Go ahead. Yep.
Hi, my name is Chris. My question is for you, Carlos. You mentioned in your first response about creating healing and decolonizing in your philanthropic work. Can you talk a little bit about how that unfolds and how you drive that process?
Yeah, so I'm the individual giving manager. I'll provide my examples and then go out macroly, which is a fancy way of saying that I interact with donors at kind of an individual basis, but the donors who give me from $1,000 to $10,000. So not minor donors, which is not really the same, but not major donors, which I also hate the fact that there's a minor and a major. So I have the real benefit of getting to interact with folks in an individual basis and being like, hey, here's how I feel about it. Here's the things for projects. They sometimes push back and be like, I don't like the way you're doing things. And I'm just like, okay, well, I don't have anything, I'm not involved in the artistic process. If you don't like us, you can just leave us. I will find $1,000 somewhere else for people who do like us. So that's something I really enjoy doing because I feel some sort of privilege in being the fact that I am a fundraiser, and they hiring a fundraiser is really hard because someone has to bring in money, and in the process of finding a new person, it takes some time. In a macroly structure, as like an institutional basis, we're no longer in our appeals writing used. We're no longer treating a donor as the sole reason why we exist. You are a part of a community, which is why it's called community-centric fundraising. Well, a reason why it's called community-centric fundraising, of folks who give to this art form, to this mission. So institutionally, we're really moving away from treating donors as oh, thank you for your $550, $5,000. Because of these $550, $5,000, our art form exists. Girl, that is a lie. It helps. That in itself is a fact. But it is not the sole reason. So we're really engaging with that. Back when I worked in the South, in North Carolina, that conversation, I sometimes wish I still worked there because I would be like, where does your money come from? And from those of you who don't know, folks who are really wealthy in the South, a lot of the money, you all know where their money comes from, but if you don't know, from plantations and slavery. So I've seen fundraisers from the South, ethical fundraisers from the South, have those tough conversations and be if you, not in white guilt, but in terms of reparations, this is the money you should be giving. In the institutional basis, fundraisers have having a lot more courage to talk to their funders and being if you really want this problem to go away, give us all your money. And corporations, foundations, Jamie can speak more on this, have a percentage limit that they have to give out by law, but it's the minimum. And they tend to keep it that way because then they're oh, we need money in perpetuity to continue solving this issue. If you wanted to solve this issue, you would give out all the money. You would give out multi-year giving. You wouldn't be thank you. You wouldn't be here is this Excel sheet that's customized to us for this $2,000 that we will only give to you 1 year. Or you will ask these stupid questions of just how are you going to solve world hunger in 5 years with these $2,000? And I'm just what are we doing? What are we thinking? And so I really discredit, part of the reason why I hate fundraising so much is because we really taught our donors and our funders to treat us this way. Mm-hmm. And instead of decolonizing wealth by Edgar Villanueva talks about a lot, using money as healing as opposed to thinking of money as a bad thing. And money can be a bad thing, and I think fundraisers have customized it to be so sometimes. But now we have the honor, the privilege, the work to do to be money is a healing factor, and it can be used for good. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Wonderful. Thanks, Chris.
All right, before we go to the audience, the last set of audience questions, just want to note that we have about 5 minutes. So if we're not able to answer all of the questions, we definitely invite everyone to join us out in the lobby and perhaps over a nice drink of your choice later on at the bar. But we're around, so just wanted to make sure everyone knew that. All right, go ahead.
Anonymous asks, how to give younger employees more money when an org has benefits they are not utilizing? Personally, me, how to ask for more money in general.
How do you ask for more money?
One of the things I'll say, as I know they have much better things, is that something that's come to my mind when I was asking for more money is that the CEO or executive or president makes a lot of money. And usually when in entry level, we're not asking for like an increase of $10,000. It's like $2K, maybe $5K. If you as a CEO can't give out $5K to retain an employee, I will leave you. But also, like, you're not valuing me. Like, I'm thinking it's like, if you as a CEO make like let's just put an example of like 200K in whatever city and you're doing fine, girl, I will tell you how to budget with like 195, because I've been making out of like 45, you know? And I'm sure you might have a family or whatever, but I've been living with like a low budget for forever. So if you need me to budget for you, CEO, president, I will do it for you. Just give me the 5K.
I also think this is where, for employers, salary bands can be really helpful. We do like a tiered system for grant makers in the arts, so I know what my colleagues make, right, based on their title. But I also think if you're somewhere where there isn't salary transparency, ask people, and it's really uncomfortable to like ask people what they make. But again, in this like idea of collective liberation, it's important to know if you are making significantly less or more than your counterpart, right? And then I think that gives you a little bit more leverage when you have that conversation about wanting to make more, because it's a lot easier if you find out that someone has about, the same amount of time in the company as you're doing like the same things, they're making $7,000 more. It's a lot easier to be like, hey, why is this person making that much more than me, But also I think coming up with like a list of, again, and I believe you spoke to this earlier, like the ways that you're contributing to your organization.
Beautiful. All right, and as we are going to our next question, I just want to pull up another slide that we have, which is resources. If anyone is curious about what resources exist in the field, in order to strengthen your pipelines and the work that you do, feel free to check out this QR code. And next question. We'll take the last couple of questions, and then we should.
Okay, and I'll be quick, and I don't have a question. I have just a couple things to say. I'm Tracy Wilson. I'm with Cincinnati Opera, and yes, I am considered an OG in the arts form.
If you don't know Tracy Wilson's work, you should look her up. She is incredible.
I just want to comment on a couple of things. Number one, let's talk about what Carlos said about people being around for many years. I've been with Cincinnati Opera for 39 years. Wow. I was the first in the industry, first black woman ever, black person, period, ever to be hired on the administrative staff. I am currently the most tenured staff member of Cincinnati Opera. Wow. So, yes, I have lived through everything that all of you are going through now. Now, here's what I want to say. What I do love most is engaging young people, especially black and brown young people, in our art forms. I love being a mentor and training up, and then I love listening as well. And that's important. That's important for any administrator who's sitting here in the room. Young people do have valuable things to say. I've learned so much from Carlos. But you also have to know how to listen, to learn, and then sometimes to kick in the butt and advise as well. Because one thing I will say to you young people is there are a lot of things that you want to do, a lot of things that you want to see happen now. This is the generation of urgency, but sometimes you have to be patient. You have to do your homework and know all of the facts sometimes before you move, because sometimes you could be moving in a direction where some things are already in place and maybe you're not aware of them, okay? So it's important to ask questions. It's important to listen, to be patient, but to still be diligent and passionate about what you're passionate about, right? And like I said, you're always gonna come up with new creative ways to do things or to process things. And so I applaud all of you for that. If you are the only black or brown person in an organization and you've been there for a while, definitely mentor your folks. Pull them aside, talk to them, have private conversations, because we can communicate in ways that they can't. we understand in ways that they don't, right? So it's important for people like me who have been doing this for a while. It's important for people like Jamie and all of you who are doing what you're doing, because now you're considered OGs and trailblazers in your fields and areas, right? So we just want to continue that, and I love you, Carlos, because I tell you what, we've had some times and moments, but I've appreciated every single moment we've had.
Oh, that's
cry.
beautiful.
Thank you, Tracy.
Thank you so much. So, unfortunately, I just got the big sign from the production team that we only have a minute left, so we're going to have to take any last questions in the lobby and elsewhere. But as we wrap up, just wanted to pass it along for a moment of celebration. Tell us what joy you've experienced lately in your life.
In my life, golly goodness.
Professionally,
yeah,
personally.
I'll say like professionally and personally, I'm really enjoying being asked to present not only here in other conferences. Thanks to all the networking, all the people that have supported me. I hope to continue doing that. So if you wanna hire me for your conference, I won't say no. But personally, it's been such a joy to talk to so many of you. It's always a joy to be here. Particularly bonding over our same sentiments about the way we feel about the field at large. So thank you for that.
Yeah, I echo Carlos. Thank you all for being here. It means so much that you want to hear what we have to say. Thank you to Ariel for agreeing to moderate this. Carlos spoiled this earlier, but my joy was going to be that I got a promotion recently, so that's very exciting. And I think it kind of speaks to a lot of the themes that have come up today, but I'm the youngest person in my organization, and I sit like in a leadership role, right? And that came because I have a supervisor and a team that actually wants to listen to what I have to say, and that's been so integral to my professional growth. And then the last thing is that with Afa Dworkin, actually as one of my mentors with the Turn the Spotlight Fellowship this past year, we generated an online resource hub for emerging Black and Brown administrators. It is in the QR code. It's called Cultivart. All the questions, it's kind of like a brain dump of all the things that are sitting in my head. It's job boards and fellowships and everything you need to about education and certificate programs, all sorts of questions that are probably rattling in your brain. It's completely free to use, so please take advantage of that, and I'm going to continue to evolve it as I learn more too.
Yeah, I would agree with all of these joys. Congratulations again, Jamie. I thank you all for being here as well. And for me, I just recently started teaching arts admin to undergraduate students, and that's been a huge joy to be able, It's really cool to hear, what is going on in their minds and to expose them to a new field. I didn't learn about arts admin until I was in college, and so it's really nice to be able to pass it forward and pay it forward, because I'm also thankful, and the joys in my life are also for my mentors that I've had and for the folks that have given me opportunities. And I'm just really appreciative. I agree wholeheartely that it's two-sided. I couldn't be in any of these positions without someone giving them to me. So I'm grateful. So yeah, those are the joys in life.
Awesome. And it has been a joy for me to be here asking these questions and learning from this amazing panel. Please give them one more round of applause. And of course, thank you to Sphinx and everyone else. I hope you all have a great rest of your afternoon.
We'll catch you outside.